Well, James, it's a pleasure to have you. So, James Dyett, welcome to Intersect. So, you are the head of platform sales at OpenAI. Before this, you were leading sales at Stripe for 7 years, and you began your career in the sustainable development space, working to increase water access in Africa for some years. Today, we're going to focus on how OpenAI operationalizes AI. So, actually, kind of how this is used in the field, what you guys offer to your enterprise customers, a bit about Automotive and what lies ahead. So welcome. Thanks for coming to Intersect.
Thanks for having me.
So you joined OpenAI February 23. This is just a few months after ChatGPT launched. And I remember that because it was dominating Thanksgiving conversation and you had to try and explain AI to non-technical folks in the family table, which was very challenging. I struggled. We obviously know GPT for that side of things, the consumer side of things, but you guys are actually working a lot with enterprises. Can you speak a bit to that?
Sure. And I joined OpenAI at a funny time because when I accepted the job, we actually hadn't launched ChatGPT. So I thought, I'm going to spend the next year or two knocking on people's doors, trying to get them to take a meeting with me. And then ChatGPT came along and, Thanksgiving and the holidays were dominated with people creating poems and putting it through its paces and realizing that there were real enterprise applications here. So we now sell two types of products to the enterprise. The first is focused on internal productivity. So we've taken ChatGPT, the popular consumer app, and we've made it an enterprise product. And a lot of enterprises are using that to improve their marketing organizations, to automate workflows for finance, to to support their legal departments. It's pretty exciting to see all the varying ways that ChatGPT is used in the workforce. We also have an API product, and the API product is a little bit more flexible. It's a little bit more challenging to build with, but this is how customers create applications on top of our models. So examples here, Salesforce has built Einstein GPT on top of our models. We have large Fortune 500s that are building customer service applications. Klarna has publicly talked about how their customer service is now about 2/3 automated thanks to our models. Morgan Stanley is supporting their financial advisors with our models. And so the API is really about these bespoke, customized applications that you can build into your business.
So there's a ton of businesses already using it. I think in the early days, I think you had told me when you joined, so this is just before GPT, you land in the seat, GPT launches, everyone wants to use it. I have a stat here from Sam. He said there were 700,000 unanswered emails of folks saying, I want to work with ChatGPT. Firstly, that makes me feel uncomfortable. I mean, I feel like we have good market pull, but that's like an obscene amount of interest. Did you use ChatGPT to figure out how to get through all of it?
Yeah, so this is funny, and I don't know that this is a moment of glory for OpenAI necessarily, because there were a lot of emails that didn't get responded to immediately. When you've got 5 people chasing 700,000 emails, you do the math, and it's sort of tough to write something thoughtful back to each of them. So we were forced to use our models pretty quickly in order to dig ourselves out of this hole that we'd created. Obviously, it's a nice problem to have, but it's also not a great experience for customers to really want to use your product and not get a response when they've done everything you've asked them to do. So we quickly hired somebody to run customer service who had an engineering background and really he actually had started a company focused on customer service, but had never led customer service teams. And he quickly got to work on building an internal instantiation of our models of ChatGPT effectively to respond to this huge backlog of tickets. And we've actually taken the learnings from what we did to dig ourselves out of this big hole and start to respond to customers to help our own customers who have similar problems and are operating at enormous scale, trying to run a customer service operation that leaves customers relatively happy at the end of the day. And so we brought that to the enterprise as well. But it was a fun time, and I think nice story. But at the moment when you're staring at that sort of wave, it does feel like there are not enough hours in the day.
Yeah, that's obviously a wild ride. If anyone has an unanswered email still from Sam or James, you can chase him down at this event. Old school. Um, so maybe thinking back to then, you are now working with all these Fortune 500s and whatnot. There's a lot of folks using OpenAI in the enterprise. Where did you actually start? Like the first companies you were working with, was it straight into Fortune 500s or others?
Yeah. Okay. So at this time, we actually only had the API product. So it was a very technical product. It wasn't something that was easily plug and play the way ChatGPT is. We had ChatGPT as a consumer product, but we didn't yet have it in a place where enterprises could buy it. So at this moment, we have a really technical product that's really powerful, but hard to build with. So what's the right customer segment? From our perspective, we really wanted to focus on AI native startups. So there's this sort of like first cohort of companies with the sort of .ai URL that really knew what to do with these models. And we wanted to basically unblock them. They were super technical. They didn't need a lot of help from our team. They just needed to to get their rate limits in a good place, to have questions answered about the latency of our models, et cetera, et cetera. So we really wanted startups to be ready to build, because companies that are super tech savvy, we believe, are going to be the ones that bring AI to enterprises like automotive. I mean, I would put Applied in that category, where you're super deep on automotive, you're super technical. You're probably going to do a better job of bringing AI to many of the companies in this room than a direct relationship with OpenAI. And so that was focus one. Focus two were on these digital native companies. You can think of, I mentioned Klarna before, companies like Notion, Snap, Intercom, Salesforce, that are sort of tech fluent and could easily build on our APIs. That was sort of like phase two, and really about unblocking them, but also giving them the support, because they maybe weren't as AI technical as some of the startup founders. And then third was the enterprise. Once we realized that some of these patterns that we developed with the early adopters could be replicated in the enterprise, we then started to move up market, and we've had a lot of success there. And we'll have had some public announcements. And we'll have some more soon about some work we're doing.
Nowadays, where you think about splitting your time and your team's time, can you talk a little bit to the split between like some of these big enterprises and maybe the smaller startup companies?
Yeah, the big focus right now is actually at the top of the market. And the reason for that is, we think,
when you say top of the market, we're talking about size of company.
Size of company. Yeah. Interestingly, there's a lot of appetite, and Sam sort of mentioned this in his video. He said, I didn't think this is how enterprise sales would go. And it's true. I worked at a company called Stripe, really successful company, but we spent the first 5 to 6 years really not paying attention to the enterprise, and the enterprise wasn't paying a lot of attention to us. So we had a lot of time to harden the product and be ready for the Fortune 500. That's not how this happened. The Fortune 500 was sort of immediately compelled by our offering. They wanted us to work with them. And so we had to quickly figure out how to make that happen. Importantly, when you do work with a large telco, with a large retailer, with a large automotive company, if you can ship at that scale and with that level of complexity, because many of your organizations have, they're global organizations, lots of different business units, a lot of collaboration needed for it to be successful. Our point of view is that if we can demonstrate that AI can have real ROI, real business impact at that top of the market with the largest companies in the world, then bringing that down is actually quite a bit easier, because sort of the complexity drops, and we've developed all these patterns that we've learned from the top of the market that we can apply down market, and that's largely been what we've seen so far. And so that's sort of the strategy right now. The startups and digital natives are off to the races. They still need our help, but the biggest question marks for us are, how do we identify and work with a lighthouse customer in heavy equipment, in chemicals, et cetera, et cetera.
Do you find that these guys are, at the top of the market these are big companies, they're public companies, they have huge responsibilities to shareholders. The promise of AI is amazing. Are they quite impatient? Like, are you getting, you start working with a company like, James, when do I see some results here? When does my business turn around?
So yes and no. I would say, and by the way, I expect all of you are looking at me and saying like, I want results and I want them now. But I would say like, here's how I'd describe my experience selling to this market. 2023 was really the year of experimentation and understanding. So we spent a lot of time just literally explaining what is a large language model, what does and doesn't it do. So there's a lot of confusion in the market.
That's mainly to the large companies.
To the large companies, and even to the smaller companies. I think there was a question of like, are these models trained in real time with our data? And we had to reinforce, nope, we do not train on your data. These models are sort of static in terms of what they know at any given time. A lot of questions like, how do they work? How real time is their data? What are they good at and what aren't they good at? What are these things that we're hearing about called hallucinations? There was a lot of time just spent doing basic education on LLMs. I think most people in this room would be like, oh yeah, of course. But in 2023, that wasn't an obvious moment. There was a bit of a, like, this feels like a magic trick. And honestly, in my job, I would say like every month I see something and it feels like a magic trick. And then, a couple of weeks later, you're like, I'll give you an example. The text to video model that we shipped, Sora, first time I saw that, I'm like, how in the world, like, it was just 12 months ago that the text to image, not text to video, looked like this pixelated nonsense. And now we're like, I'm squinting and seeing like future films not that far away. And then, a couple weeks go by and you think, like that text to video model, isn't as good as it thought. It goes from magic trick to sort of part of our life really, really quickly. That is how I think the whole market was in 2023. The original question was about like CEOs, impatience, et cetera. I didn't feel a lot of impatience then. I think there was a lot of like really trying to understand, what does this mean for our business? 2024 is a different story. I think there is a real sense of, okay, we need to commit to a project or some projects. Most companies, I suspect most of you here, have some point of view of how AI is going to fit into your business, and you want to build it, and it's got to show results. I also think those CEOs recognize that this doesn't happen overnight, and that they've got to do a lot of change management in their organizations to figure out how to effectively build with this technology, how to measure it, how to think about the trends and get ahead of those. So, okay, if the models are going to keep getting smarter, how do I build in a way that benefits from that intelligence and doesn't just, create a bunch of throwaway work because I built something that is just going to be obviated by the next set of models? How do I build for the fact that these models are getting a heck of a lot cheaper? Sam mentioned, I think like 100 times cheaper. I mean, we keep seeing the cost curve drop. So there is that desire to see results, but I think it's paired with a sense of, look, the next decade is going to be about finding a way for AI to be in our organization. We're not going to sort of cut off the experimentation, cut off the work if we don't see ROI in Q1 of 2025.
So it sounds like, it's a partnership with these guys. They know they need to be in the room. They need to be in the world of using AI for their business. And they kind of, they're rolling out changes, using technology as the technology gets better. Like 100x improvement over 2 years is kind of insane in cost. Yeah.
That's been my experience. I'd love to hear from you all, because it's always, the customer voice is the most important piece. But I'm not getting pushed super hard on this piece. I'm getting pushed on, is my team learning? Are we shipping? Are we making progress? And less on, have we hit a particular ROI metric yesterday? They need to see a path to that. But 2024 is about building and shipping and bringing AI to your customers.
Well, let's shift gears a bit and talk about automotive specifically. The majority of folks in this room are automotive people. It's a very large industry. It's got a very, very long history, and AI is kind of set to sweep this industry and create tons of changes, which I think most folks are very excited for. How do you see OpenAI's role in automotive in general?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the way we think of ourselves relative to any particular industry is we're never going to build industry-specific applications. You'll often hear Sam and our leadership talk about AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. What we really want to do is build great foundational models that have general intelligence that's applicable, hopefully, across all industries. And then it's the work of companies that are building on top of it to make this work for their customers, some of whom might be consumers, or in the case of Applied, are businesses in a certain industry. We don't purport to, and I don't think we will ever be good at building the best automotive model, but can we build the best general intelligence and partner with a company like Applied that's an expert in automotive, or a company in healthcare, or a company in financial services that really knows their end customers, and that ends up becoming the pathway to an industry-specific impact. So that's the approach we're taking today. That doesn't mean we don't care about the needs of automotive. Often the way that'll look is, we'll be working with a company like Applied who knows automotive deeply and says, you know what, the models aren't really good at this particular thing, and automotive companies need you to be better at this thing to be used in production. I was actually just talking to your head of product, who's a friend, from business school, and he was saying, latency really matters if you need to bring these models into the car. Well, that's something that actually other industries care about too. And it's like, okay, well, I'll take that to the research team and say, hey, if we want to be able to have an impact in this particular industry, well, the response times have to be way, way shorter than they are today. That's the way we would engage with an industry, but we wouldn't think like, let's build auto chat GPT. And unless Sam has something cooking up that I don't know about, like that is not the plan.
So really, you've got kind of almost two layers. One is where you would engage directly with OEMs and auto companies in general. You're looking at productivity improvements. You're looking at all the improvements that can be felt across any organization, any large organization. And then you've got this vertical piece where you're maybe partnering with companies that actually have deep expertise in like automotive shipping software for vehicles, for example.
You said it perfectly. So I suspect your marketing department or your finance department probably needs very similar internal productivity tools to software companies, to retail companies, to financial services companies. And so ChatGPT is sort of that like horizontal layer for internal productivity. We'd love to work with you there. I think the question for you all when it comes to automating auto-specific workflows or bringing AI into your products or services are, is there a company like Applied or somebody else that you can partner with that is building this at scale and are experts in your industry? Or do you have to build it directly with us? And I suspect in the vast majority of cases, picking a great software partner who knows your industry is going to be a great path to market.
Maybe switching gears again, talking about some competition and OpenAI in the future. We're obviously seeing Meta and other companies similar enter the market, doing lots of interesting things. They are taking, a slightly different approach from OpenAI, much more in favor of open source, releasing recent models. SAM 2 just came out, which was under an Apache license. What does this mean for OpenAI? Like, how do you react to that?
So I think the first question is what it means for customers. I think for customers this is great. Great for two reasons. It's another option for you, and it keeps us on our toes. What does it mean for us specifically? My experience has been customers really care about how smart are the models at the things they want them to be smart at, and how much do they cost. And if we keep pushing the frontier on both of those, and I think if you were to look at we think about things in sort of like a cost per intelligence 2x2. If our models are continuing to deliver the best cost per intelligence, customers are going to be really happy. And that's going to be what we're going to need to do to compete with open source. I think there's also things that we can do that the open source players can't, which is help customers, work closely with them to help build these applications. My experience is in the early days right now, there's not a lot of experience. Like it'd be hard to go out on the market and find a software engineer who's been building with LLMs for the last decade. because they don't exist. LLMs haven't been around for the last decade. So everybody's sort of figuring this out in real time. And I think one advantage we have over open source is we can work closely with your teams on how to build with this technology.
But ultimately, it does sound you still have to have the best product wins. You just need to build.
Always best product wins. And by the way, as these open source models get better, there's a lot of internal slacks about, okay, the bar's been raised here. We're going to have to raise it again ourselves.
So given that you do have to keep competing, it's not going to be a locked up market at all. Kind of not the way SaaS was back in the day. It's really very, very different now. The competition is rife for you guys. How do you think about your business model changing? So you spoke a bit about the startups. Now you've moved to these big organizations, enabling their success. How do you think about your business model in the future?
Yeah, I think this is like one of the most fascinating things about AI is how quickly the largest companies in the world reacted to what we did at OpenAI, and how quickly Fortune 500s have wanted to adopt. Like, the classic Clay Christensen disruptive innovation story we've all learned is that new technology comes and it's sort of used by the tinkers and the tech companies, and it'll be a while before the large companies react. And so you've got a lot of time to sort of sneak up on the competition and build a great business model. That is not the problem that I have right now. I'm competing with my 50-person sales team, competing with the Microsofts, Googles, Amazons of the world. And so we've had to think about, and by the way, we're not just competing with them on a go-to-market perspective. There are all these new models that are coming out. And so feels like every week there's a new model that's great at X, Y, or Z. And so in the world of like a very, very competitive market, I think from our perspective, the business model has to be focused. I had a mentor at Stripe, Claire Hughes Johnson. She's amazing. You should read her book if you haven't. And she always said strategy has to hurt. And for us, the way it hurts is when I'm leading a group of 50 sellers and 300 go-to-market folks more broadly, we've got to focus and we've got to pick a small group of customers we're going to invest with deeply. And I tell the team, let's have the best deployments, not the most. That's going to be the business model. It's going to be a real focused business model for now. Maybe in a couple of years, we'll have a bigger sales team and we'll be able to expand. But that's going to be the focus at the moment. We'll also certainly evolve pricing and packaging over time, but that's not the immediate focus.
Wow. That's interesting. I think quite different than the way a lot of folks think about OpenAI, just broadly using tons of GPT. I mean, that still happens, but really like the deep focus is with quite few customers. Yeah.
Hopefully some of you all. I had to do that. I'm in sales.
It's terrible. It's terrible. We apologize. So we've spoken about the future business model for OpenAI specifically. Just to wrap us up, I think with any technology change, folks get scared about it. We're in Silicon Valley, generally technology optimists. That's why I live here. What's the view for a bright AI future? You must see it all.
For me, I think it's, and Sam says this a lot to us, but if AI can be an assistant for scientific discovery, that's really exciting. All the sort of dreams we have about, healthcare innovation, innovation around climate, innovation, sort of throughout the economy. If AI can play a small role in there, I think we'll all feel like this was a positive technological change. Oh, and I do think there's something special already happening around accessibility to education for people who don't have that same access. It's amazing the stories we hear at OpenAI of people who have learned so much from ChatGPT living in areas that don't have access to world-class education. Those are my two optimist takes.
No, they're fantastic. Outside of automotive, I'm excited about those as well. Well, listen, James, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate you being here.